I'm the Scale Model Geek, and in this video I'll be... Oh, hold on, okay, sorry, give me a sec. Hello?
Hey Geek, this is Gameyy Builds.
Hey Gamey.
I was wondering if you might be interested in a blind box collaboration. You know, where we each send the other person a box of junk and then we have to kit bash and world build something with it. I'm thinking of a mining theme, but I'm open to suggestions. Let me know what you think.
That sounds awesome. I'm in. Well, here it is, packaged all the way from the USA. Must admit, I'm feeling a bit excited to see what's inside. I'm keen to see what Gameyy has sent me. Oh, cool, look at that. Miniature fake vegetation, you can never go wrong with that. You can never even have enough of it. What do we got here? Okay, some cotton buds. Some little piping there I can use. A small bag of goodies by the look of it. What do we got? Some wheels there, a motorbike. And what's left of Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. Some bendy straws, and looks like the guts of a pen there. More piping, again, that'll come in handy. A bag full of wiring, that's a network cable there. That'll have heaps of wiring inside of that, so that'll come in handy as well. This looks like some sprues from a Gundam. Some great looking greeblies there. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, here's a bit of a surprise. Okay, oh cool, it's a t-shirt. Oh, look at that, that's pretty awesome. That's some of Gamey's artwork there on his own t-shirt. That is absolutely awesome and I love it, much appreciated Gameyy. Thanks for that. What do we got? Some more stickers and some more of his artwork. Oh, these are actually previous builds. So go check out his YouTube channel. I'll leave the links in the description. I'll also leave a link in the description to his web shop. So head over there, give him some love and give him a bit of support. This dude is one very talented man. Alright, first thing I need to do is lay out all the bits and pieces he's sent me so I've got a better idea of what I have. I kind of start planning in my head what I can actually use. There is so much here, obviously I won't be able to use it all, but there are some really interesting bits in here, including some complimentary, what is that, blue tack I think it is. Parts of an airplane, some more motorbike bits. There's that Darth Vader thing again. Oh, I think that was a Y-Wing there. Now, I've had this Excavator Kit laying around in my stash for quite a while, and I think the excavation tools on this unit will come in really handy. After all, we are doing a miner's theme. Now, this kit is 1/35th scale, and the quality of the parts in this is fantastic, but there's no way I'm going to be using all of it, so guess what? I'm going to end up with even more greeblies for future projects. Some of the parts in this kit are not only plastic, but there's some rubber bits as well. The hydraulic lines, I will need to use a bit of super glue to put them into place. Got some moving parts in this, so it'll make my posing of the machinery a lot easier. I also send a whole box of greeblies to Gameyy, and I have no idea what he's building. I won't know till he actually posts the video. I'm looking forward to see what Gameyy does with the box of goodies that I send him. Actually, a lot of it was probably junk, I think. Hopefully he can use the parts. These are the finished armatures and they've come up really good. They're exactly what I want for my machinery. Now I need a laser because the theme of my diorama is an alternative world that has run out of resources and they've had to try and find new ways of creating energy. And they find these crystals in the middle of the Australian outback. These crystals have immense energy within them, but unfortunately immensely unstable and dangerous. Because of their volatility, humans cannot mine these crystals, so they've developed machinery as well as droids to go in and do the work for them. The droids, who are controlled by AI, work 24/7 on mining the energy from these crystals. About 95% of this laser is made from Gameyy greeblies, and a few other bits and pieces as well. With something like this, you need to use a combination of super glue as well as general plastic glue. This is a metal piece, so for something like that you need to use super glue. Every time I use a piece, I kind of flip it and rotate it, see what looks best on the overall design of it. And these side things are actually the turbos of the Batmobile, the 1989 version. Earlier I did run a piece of wire through the center of the laser because I do want to add some LED filaments to the laser blast. So we get a bit of glow. Very happy with the way it's going so far. At first I wasn't sure if I was going to use tank tracks or walker legs for the mobility of this excavator. I ended up using the tracks because I'd used walker legs in a previous build. Now if you haven't already, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications button. Would love your support. And don't forget to share this video. I really enjoy kit bashing. It's one of my favourite forms of modelling. I really enjoy the challenge of finding some bits and pieces and kind of gluing them together, screwing them together and making sure they look like they're supposed to be there. With the advent of computer graphics, it's kind of sad to see that form of creativity disappear. Some of the best spaceships were created through kit bashing. Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Alien, the Nostromo, the sequel Aliens with the Sulaco. Some of these are just classic ships. Of course, let's not forget about the Thunderbirds. The creators there were absolute masters of creating machinery out of so many different kits. Here I'm just doing some precision cutting, trying to make this, a claw or something to fit onto the base. Because this is a partial resin base, I'll need to use a bit of super glue for this. I needed to add the laser to the other arm. This is when I realised that I actually had the perfect thing for that. From Gameyy's greeblies, these are the front forks of a motorbike. I do need to remove the chrome that's on those forks. I'm using this easy off oven cleaner. This stuff works really great, but do it outside, very toxic stuff. Just about to glue some round discs so the front forks have got something to adhere to. Of course we've got to chop off the handlebars because they're pretty useless, they're no good in this. Dab of super glue and I just held it into place. And then I ran the wire through the crane arm and into the body, so it was hidden. That's looking really good. Now for the back of it, I thought it looked a bit sparse. I had these bits left over from a previous project, so I thought I could incorporate it into this build. I figured that would look awesome as engines at the back of the machine. But then I ran into another problem. Those engines got in the way of the crane arm. So I just used a bottle top here to lift the height of that crane, excavator, whatever you want to call it, and it turned out perfect, it even looked better. Now these are hover engines from a previous build, and this unit holds a crystal that powers the machine. Just adding some more greeblies from Gameyy's Greeblies. Dude should trademark that name. And to add more detail to the front of the machine, I printed up these nuts and bolts years ago, and I literally printed up hundreds of them, and I've been using them ever since. Bit of super glue, and I just put them up randomly around the place just to add a bit of a visual interest to it. They are a great way of filling up some empty spaces. You can never have enough nuts and bolts on machinery. Off camera, I did run a piece of brass tube through the center of the arm just to give it a bit more strength and also help with posing the machine. Now I need to add a bit of wiring between the laser and the arm just so it looks like it's going to do something. And this is just a bit of masking tape I'm wrapping around the wiring to keep it together and also add a bit of visual interest and a dab of super glue to make sure it doesn't unravel. These cables are really stiff, so they took a bit of force to get them into place. And to keep them into place, I used some 2-part araldite. You can see my hand shaking. It was a bit of force trying to get it in there, but I finally did. I wasn't going to get wiring to outgun me. And with the magic of editing, I gave it an undercoat off camera. Once you do that, it kind of brings everything together and starting to look like something. Now let's move on to creating some figures. Now these miners are created in a piece of software, online software called Titancraft. The great thing about this site is you can create individual characters, and once you choose your base character, you can then change the heads, the arms, the outfits. You can give them pants or shorts or alien heads, whatever. It's just endless You're just limited by your own imagination. Now, once I was happy with what I got, effectively I just picked a base droid, and then I started reposing him. This is a really extremely simple process, and it's just a matter of using those circles that are around his articulated arms and highlighting those little arrows, those little diamond shapes within the arms, and then you can just move it around. Really easy to pose to get what you need. What I wanted to convey with these particular droids are just like council workers. You know, one guy works and the rest just stand around watching. This particular dude will be just leaning on a shovel and the rest will be standing around, tools in hand. And once you're finished creating your droid, you can then export it as an STL file, 3D print it, and you're off. To paint these dudes, I'll be doing some zenithal lighting, and that starts with the base coat of black, and using some of this ink, which is titanium white, I then spray from one direction. This then creates my highlights as well as my shadows. I then give it a very light spray of some of this blue, making sure I don't lose any of those highlights I just created. Then I add a bit of black around his waist as well as his knee joints and elbow joints. Once that is completed, I then did a very light dry brush of silver, and then I used some of this clear red from Tamiya to paint the faces, which I'd previously painted with silver. And that gives me a really cool anodized look. I then did the same paint job on all the rest of them. To add a bit more visual interest to each character, I found some of these numerical decals from my stash. I then added a different number to each of the droids. These droids are really cheap to produce and expendable. These droids have taken over every dangerous job, like mining and deep sea diving. And this is our fully completed droid, ready for the diorama. Let's move on to the painting of the machinery, and I'm giving it a base coat of sun yellow from Volatile. The laser is a flat black, which is then dry brushed with a silver. And the wiring's black, and that was dry brushed with a dark grey. And then the hydraulic lines were also painted with a flat black. This thing is really starting to come together. I also added some decals. You can hardly see it here, but it is a light grey, and they're basically the different cells of the machine, which had an individual number. I gave the unit a spritz of water and then gave it a wash of some brown. Then once that was dry, using this number 5 dry brushing brush from Golden Maple, I used some light tan to dry brush the whole unit. These brushes have a slightly stiffer bristle to them, so you have complete control of how much paint ends up on the model. These Golden Maple brushes are the only ones I use for dry brushing now, and you can see the final finish are really nice. You can go into the description and check out all the affiliate links that I have there. All the remaining hydraulic lines and cabling copped a bit of dry brushing with some dark grey. All these years that I'm building these dioramas, I've never actually gotten into depth of what bounces around in my head. So I think, I'm way overdue for that, especially since I've got a collaboration with Gameyy Builds, who's the master of world building. I think it's time to let you into my head. The world was at war, and peace had become a distant memory. In a desperate bid to end the conflict, the United States initiated the Manhattan Project in 1942, which was a secret nuclear research program. Despite Albert Einstein's grave warnings about the potential dangers, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the project's scientific director, pressed on with his experiments. On July 16, 1945, the team detonated the first atomic bomb at the Trinity test site in New Mexico. The scientists celebrated their groundbreaking success, unaware that the test had not gone as they had expected. The massive explosion had fractured the very fabric of time and space, creating an unforeseen and devastating result. This rupture split the world into a separate universe, running parallel to our own world, but with a divergent outcome. On Earth Prime, the original universe, the USA continued to refine and increase the yield of their atomic bombs. The success of the Trinity test spurred an international arms race, with other nations joining the quest for nuclear supremacy. Each subsequent nuclear test further fractured space and time, giving birth to multiverses that branched at various points along Earth Prime's timeline. As an explorer of these alternate universes, I delve into the unique challenges and innovations each Earth presents. Through creative builds, I bring to life the divergent societies, landscapes and technologies that have evolved from the same point of origin, the Trinity test. Welcome to my universe and back to the build. Now these are the crystals that I printed up in my 3D printer, and I just used some clear resin, and I plan to light one of them up with some LED lighting. I need to build a mounting point for these crystals, and I'm just using some XPS foam here and a hot glue gun to hold the two pieces together, because I'm not getting quite the height that I need from one piece. Hot knife to shape it into, well, shape. Interestingly, I didn't even use half of what I glued together. This is a hole for all the power cabling to go through. And then using some more hot glue, I start sticking all the crystals onto that little mound. There's no real plan here, I'm just sticking them onto areas that I think that'll kind of look good and the composition is balanced. Once the hot glue had firmed up, hardened, there was no way these crystals were going to go anywhere. They were there for good. And that looks pretty otherworldly. I then placed the main two pieces onto the XPS foam board just to work out my composition and where I need to permanently put into place. I'm trying to get that laser adjusted so it's going to hit right in the middle of that large crystal. Here I'm cutting out a hole for that wiring that I mentioned earlier, and that just pops out. And then on the back of it I need to cut out an area for the battery compartment. And I'm just using a couple of AA batteries, which will give me 3 volts of power. I then gouge out that area with a steel ruler. It comes out pretty much perfect. But then quick test fit just to make sure it's perfect. Back to the hot glue again to stick down the crystal mount onto the board. And to add a bit more visual interest, I decided what I might do is create some rock formations kind of growing out of the crystal mound. I wanted it to look like the rays of a sun. For this section all I did was grab some small pieces of XPS foam and just broke them into shape, and the broken edges is what gave me some really nice textures. Here I'm covering the whole thing with some PVA glue, or wood glue, craft glue, it's all the same thing. Here I'm sprinkling the PVA glue with some grey tile grout, and this gives me a really nice texture once it's dry. In previous builds I've tried to use all sorts of different types of medium to create groundwork. I've used plaster, I've used sand, I've mixed it with glue, and I've mixed it with water, and all sorts of different type of techniques. I found using this tile grout gives me a really interesting texture in the final finish. And by spritzing the tile grout with some water, I was able to add it in layers. A great little thing happened, which I found really interesting. As you can see, I end up with these cracks, and they look really interesting. Like I said, I really loved the way that came out. I did need to do a bit of cleaning up on the crystals as a bit of tile grout dust got onto them. A wet brush, that did the job really easily. Once that was all dry, I then went in with an airbrush and some very shades of grey, just added some interest to it. I then used some of this brown acrylic paint and created a very thin wash and just covered the whole base in it. I left that to dry overnight, and then the following day I went in with this dry brushing brush, once again from Golden Maple. This is the large size number 6 brush. Using a light tan, I then hit all the high areas of the base. And this brought out so much detail, and you can see it's starting to pop everywhere. If you haven't tried the dry brushing technique, I thoroughly recommend it because it brings out so much detail in your models and your bases. Here I'm drilling a hole in the crystals. This is going to be for the LED filament wiring. Now I started off with a small drill just so I don't crack or split the resin print. Then I increased the size of the drill. I did that I think 2 or 3 times and it worked really well, didn't have any issues. Now I did end up changing the way I was going to wire up this laser. Originally I had that little wire going through the laser. I ended up snipping that off, and what I ended up doing was having a piece of clothes hanger wire, and that would be my positive, and I would just run it down the length of the actual filament, and the other end will be the negative. Another way to tell the difference between positive and negative, the positive side has a small hole in it, and of course you wire up the red wires to that. Once I soldered that into place, I just twisted the filaments around the wire, and this just gave me a kind of an interesting look to it. Now I do have, if I remember rightly, green, red and blue, and then the positive side just pops into the end of the laser, and the other end, which will have the wiring for the positive and the negative side, will then run through the actual crystal. All the filaments are only 3 volts, so I've got this little battery compartment. It does have a little switch on there, and all I do is put 2 AA batteries in there. I'm using some high-tech adhesion here, which is just a strip of gaffer tape, and that holds the battery compartment inside the XPS foam. With that done, it's time to start putting all the components together. This is the track chassis, and that'll be put into place with some 2-part araldite, the 5-minute stuff. I then add the body to the chassis and the arm to the body. Once I pop that into place, I then align the laser beam to the actual laser. And it's as simple as that. I don't need to do anything else. I don't have to run any wiring at the laser end, which is really easy and really cool. Get ready, here it comes, voila, it actually works. Now off camera, I did add another blue filament inside the crystal, just to get it to glow a lot more as the laser beam hits the crystal. Now it's time to glue these little mechs into place. To hold those mechs into place, I just use a touch of super glue on their feet. Off camera, I did end up making another mech who was silver, and he ended up being like a supervisor standing next to the driver. Using the bendy straws, I made up a whole bunch of these extraction piping, but they ended up turning out terrible. I hated them for this particular diorama. I think I'll end up using it for something else, but for this build, it just didn't work, so I ended up scrapping that idea. For the final detail of the diorama, these are the small little vegetation pieces that Gameyy had sent me, and they finish off with such a great touch to it. Really happy with the way this turned out. I had a lot of fun building this thing. It was a great challenge trying to figure out how to use somebody else's greeblies that they had sent you and try and incorporate that into the build. But I think it turned out alright, so what do you reckon? Let me know what you think. Just leave a comment in the comments section. I think it's time we should go and check out the final look. This is the first collaboration I've ever done, and thanks to Gameyy Builds for reaching out. It was so much fun, had a ball doing this, great experience. I'd love to do another one day. I can't wait to see what he's created with the greeblies I've sent him. I'll leave his video link in the description, so make sure you go and check it out. In the meantime, check out some of my older videos if you like the stuff that I do. So much fun having you here with me, and I'll see you in the next video.